Hello class, it's Mr. Cablan here again, and today I will be dealing with the first lesson dealing with fractions, and specifically we're just going to look at understanding fractions, the different parts of fractions, and how to go from one form of a fraction to another. So let's get right to it. All right, so when we're dealing with fractions, what you have to understand about fraction, that it does consist of two different parts over here. Okay, and when we're looking at a fraction, it consists of a top number and a bottom number. So if you take a look at the examples that I have here, okay, notice that all three examples that you see on the screen here all have a top number and a bottom number. Now the top number is what's called the numerator, okay, and the bottom number is what's called the denominator. Now, what we're going to learn in this example here is we're going to take each of these fractions and to put them in what are called lowest terms. Now, before we do that, we have to understand that for each example, we have to find what's called a common factor. So this is one of those times that you probably want to take out a multiplication table sheet if you're not too strong with multiplication tables, okay, or a calculator, all right? So what a common factor is that once you take a look at both the numerator and the denominator, a common factor is a number that divides evenly into both the numbers that make up the fraction. So let's take a look at the first example here. We have 2 and we have 4. So you have to take a look at the two numbers separately first and then ask yourself this question, what does 2 go into 4 or does 4 go into 2? Okay, or are there any other numbers that go into both those numbers? So let's start off with 4 first. Okay, so since 4 is a bigger number than 2, 4 does not go into 2. However, 2 goes into 4. So since 2 goes into both 2 and 4, 2 in this case here would be the common factor. Now, once you've identified the common factor, all we need to do is divide both the numerator and the denominator with a common factor to give us our new numbers, which will give us the new fraction in lowest terms. So what we have here will be 2 divided by 2, which gives me 1, and then 4 divided by 2, which gives me 2. So 2 over 4 as a reduced fraction in lowest terms will be 1 over 2. All right, now that you've seen that example, let's take a look at 3 and 12. Now, anytime you see a number and it's bigger than the other one, okay, the bigger number, okay, can't go evenly into the smaller number. So for example, if you look at 3 and 12, 12 does not go into 3. However, 3 goes into 12, and obviously 3 goes into 3. So the common factor here will be 3. So what we have here is 3 divided by 3, which gives me 1. Okay, and when we take the 12 divided by 3, that gives me 4. So 3 over 12 is going to reduce to 1 over 4. Okay? All right, this next example, we have 6 and 8. Now, 8 is a bigger number than 6, so 8 doesn't go into 6. However, even though 6 is a smaller number than 8, 6 doesn't go evenly into 8. So question is, what number goes evenly into both 6 and 8? Well, let's start off with some basics here. 6 and 8 are what are called even numbers. Okay, and even numbers are any numbers that can, where numbers like 2, 4, 6, and 8 can go evenly into. So let's talk about that here. So as I said before, 8 doesn't go into 6, okay, and 6 doesn't go into 8. Now, how about 4? Well, even 4, even though 4 is a lower number than 6 and 8, okay, 4 doesn't evenly go into 6. However, 4 does go evenly into 8. But since it needs to go evenly into both numbers, okay, 4 is not the answer here. So let's take a look at 2. Well, 2 goes into 6, yep, and 2 goes into 8, sure it does. Okay, so what we're going to do in here is the common factor here is 2. So we're going to take the 6 here and divide that by 2. Okay, that gives me 3, and 8 divided by 2, that gives me 4. So 6 over 8 as a fraction in lowest terms is going to be 3 over 4. Okay, so when we're looking at these examples over here, always take a look at the numbers first and determine what numbers go evenly into each one. Okay, so let's take a look at the next examples here. We have 25 over 5. So for these two examples, notice that the top number happens to be a larger value than the bottom number. These are both examples of what are called improper fractions, which we're going to see in a future example in just a moment. All right, so if you take a look at 25 and 5, okay, so 25, since the bigger number than 5, okay, does not evenly go into 5. However, 5 goes into 25. So the common factor for this will be 5. Okay, so we're going to take the 25, divide that by 5, gives me 5. Okay, and then we're going to take this 5 here, we're going to divide that by 5 as well, and that will give me 1. So 25 over 5, when we reduce that, will become 5 over 1, okay, which you have to reduce in this case here as a whole number, which in this case here is 5. So anytime you have a whole number, whether it's a positive or negative, and it happens to be over 1, okay, your answer will always be whatever the whole number is. So for example, if you had 6 over 1, the answer would be 6. Okay, if you had 7 over 1, okay, then the answer would be 7. If you had negative 10 over 1, then the answer would be negative 10, etc. Okay? All right, so for part E over here with 14 and 8, now again, 14, okay, doesn't go into 8. Okay, now even though 8 is a smaller number than 14, 8 doesn't go evenly into 14. All right, so we need to take a look at other possibilities. Now, 14 and 8 also happen to be even numbers. So if you look at even numbers to go evenly to both 8 and 14, there's only one. Okay, and that common factor here in that number, that's going to be 2. So what we're going to do here, we're going to take this 14, we're going to divide that by 2. So that gives me 7. Okay, and if you take that 8 and divide that by 2, that gives me 4. So 14 over 8 as a fraction in lowest terms is going to be 7 over 4. Okay, so now that you've seen how basic fractions can be reduced to what are called lowest terms, okay, we're going to see how we, for these two type of examples, okay, where we have an improper fraction, you're going to see how we can get into that form as well when we have another form, okay? Now, tying what we did in the previous lesson and what we just did right now, we're now going to combine both integers and fractions into one type of question here, okay? So notice in each example here, not only do we have a fraction, we have integers that make up the numerator and denominator as well, okay? So anytime you're looking at operations that deal with fractions in this case, okay, you always take a look at the numerator and the denominator separately. So let's start off with the first one here. So we have 2 plus 3 on the top and then 13 minus 3 on the bottom. So all we're going to do here, we're going to take the 2 and 3, 2 plus 3, which gives me 5, and 13 minus 3, which gives me 10. Okay? Now, 5 over 10 is the answer to what happens after we simplify the top and the bottom numbers here. However, this is not the final answer. Any questions dealing with fractions must always be expressed in what are called lowest terms. So now we need to take a look at the 5 and the 10 and see what number goes evenly into both. Okay, so again, 10 is a bigger than the number in the 5, so 10 can't go into 5. However, 5 does go into 10, and obviously 5 goes into 5. So the common factor in this case here is going to be 5. So once we find out the common factor, we're going to divide the top number here by the common factor of 5 here. So 5 divided by 5 gives me 1. 10 divided by 5, that gives me 2. So 5 over 10 in reduced form, will be 1 over 2. Okay? Okay, so for part B over here, we have negative 2 minus 1 on the numerator and 3 plus 9 on the denominator. So what we have is negative 2 minus 1. So remember, negative 2 is 2 spots to the left of this 0 on a number line, if you want to draw that out. Okay, and when you're subtracting 1, we're going 1 spot to the left. So negative 2 minus 1, that's going to give me negative 3, and then 3 plus 9 is going to give me 12. Okay, now when you look at a fraction, okay, and notice this one here happens to be a negative, okay, only look at the numerator and denominator, and okay, if you want to look at it with positive numbers, and if that makes it easier, by all means do that. So if you take a look at just the 3 and the 12, ask yourself again, what number goes evenly into both 3 or negative 3 and 12? Well, 12 doesn't go into 3 or negative 3. However, 3 does go into both numbers here. So in this case here, the common factor here is 3. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take the negative 3, divide that by 3, and that gives me 1. Don't forget, when you take a negative number and divide it by a positive number, the resulting answer will always be negative. Okay, and we're going to take this 12, we're going to divide that by 3, and that's going to give me 4. So the resulting answer for this will be negative 1 over 4. Okay, all right, let's take a look at more examples here. So again, just like we did in the previous example, we have 45 minus 15 and negative 5 minus 5. Okay, so 45 minus 15 will give me 30. Now, negative 5 minus 5, okay, we're subtracting 5 or left of the number line here. So the resulting answer here will be 30 over negative 10. Now, this is where something like question like this, there are quite a few possibilities here. So there are a couple of numbers that do go evenly to 30 and 10 over here. So let's start off from the bottom. So 30 and negative 10 happen to be even numbers. So 2 does go evenly into both numbers. Okay, and when you're looking at 30 and negative 10, okay, 5 goes into both numbers as well. Okay, and our last number that goes evenly to both 30 and negative 10 is 10. Now, we have 3 possibilities I've listed for you here. So the question is, which of those 3 between 2, 5, and 10 do we use? when you're using a common factor, you always choose the highest of those three values here. So between 2, 5, and 10, okay, the common factor for this, okay, that's going to be 10 because it is the highest of those three numbers there, all right? So what we're going to do here, we're going to take the 30, divide by the common factor of 10, that gives me 3. We're going to take the negative 10, divide that by common factor of 10, gives me negative 1. And that's going to give us a resulting answer here of 3 over negative 1, or simply just negative 3. So don't forget that anytime you have a number that's over 1, or in this case here, negative 1, okay, you always have to express it as a whole number. Now you're probably wondering, well, why is it negative 3? If you take a look at the step before it here, we have a positive number of 3, positive 3, and we're dividing by a negative number. So remember, rules of integers dictate that when you take a positive number and divide it by a negative number, the resulting answer will always be negative. All right. Okay, last one with the operations here. Now, for these ones here, we just need to simplify the signs beside each other, starting off with the positive and negative. So remember that anytime you have a combination of a positive and a negative together, you always have to change that to a negative. Okay, and for the two negatives in the bottom, we change that to a positive. So for the next step, I'm just going to rewrite the next step here with those changes so we can now have our brand new operations. So what we have here is negative 17 minus 3 on the top, or the numerator, and the negative 8 plus 4 on the bottom, or the denominator. Okay? All right, so negative 17 minus 3, that's going to give me negative 20. Okay, negative 8 plus 4, that will give me negative 4 here. Okay? Now, this next step here, if you take a look at the negative 20 and the negative 4 over here, okay, ask yourself, what number goes evenly into both here? So in this case over here, okay, our common factor, okay, if you look at negative 20 and negative 4, okay, there are actually a couple possibilities. Okay, so those are both even numbers, so 2 goes into both numbers. Okay, and the other number that goes evenly into it is 4. Okay, so you can see in this case over here, okay, there are 2 possibilities, but you always choose the highest one, okay, which in this case here is 4. So when we take the negative 20 divided by 4, it gives me negative 5. When we take the negative 4 divided by 4, it gives me negative 1, and that gives us negative 5 over negative 1. Again, and rules of integers dictate that when you have 2 negatives that are dividing each other, the resulting answer here will be positive. So the answer here will be 5 over 1, which you need to express as a whole number of 5. Okay? Now, I'm just going to, before I move on to the next example, I just want to talk about this one over here just to highlight another option, specifically these two. Another thing that you could have done in this example, an alternate way to do it again, is to take a look at this for a moment. Okay? And notice that when you have the 2 negatives over here, another thing that you can do is that you can change this to a positive in the next step before you actually do the common factoring part. So for example, if you notice you have 2 negatives, okay, what you could wind up having here will just be 20 over 4. So if you took just the 20 over 4, because the 2 negatives become make this fraction a positive, okay, you will still get the resulting answer here correct here, provided that you did the math correctly here. Okay, just in a different sequence of steps. All right. Okay, moving along here, we're now going to see how we can take what are called mixed numbers and change them to what are called improper fractions. Now, what a mixed number involves here, okay, notice that there's a number, okay, and right beside it to the right of that number is a fraction. Now, what we have to do here is to perform a series of steps to change that fraction and change it into a mixed number. Okay, and the way we do that is we take the denominator and we multiply it to the number that's in front of the fraction. Now, once we do that, whatever number that is, we're going to take that number and add it to the 3. So just to break this down step by step here, notice what I've done here in brackets. I've multiplied the 4 and the 5 together, and that's going to give me 20. And that 20, we're going to add 3 to it, which gives us an improper fraction of 23 over 4. Okay, so notice that our resulting answer here of a mixed number here, okay, the improper fraction is, as I said in the beginning of this lesson, is when the numerator is a higher value than the denominator there, all right? And again, all you need to do are those exact same steps for the next set of examples. Now, what I've done here is just a pictorial representation of what 5 3/4 is. So you notice that I have 5 boxes which are fully shaded in, okay, each box having 4 little boxes inside. And in the last box over here, I only shaded 3 out of the 4 boxes, just to give you a picture of what 5 3/4 looks like. All right. Okay, so same set of examples. Okay, so what we have here is 2 2/5. So what we're going to do here, we're going to take the denominator of 5 and multiply it to the 2. and then whatever that is, we're gonna add that to the 2. Okay, so notice I've just broken this down step by step to just show you what order to do it in. So 5 times 2 gives me 10, and then when we add 2 to it, it gives us 12 over 5, okay? Okay, next one over here, we're gonna take the 7, multiply it to the 3, and whatever result that is, add 5 to it. Okay, so that's gonna give me 21 plus 5, and then that'll give me 26 over 7. All right, and last but not least here, we're gonna take that 6, okay, we're gonna multiply that to the 4, and then after that, add 1 to that. Okay, so notice what we have here is 6 times 4, which gives me 24. We do that first. Okay, and then we add 1 to it, and that gives me 25. So the resulting final answer for that will be 25 over 6. Okay, now before I proceed to the last example, notice that all 3 of these examples, all of these mixed numbers have to be positive. So for the last example here, we know how do we change a negative mixed number into an improper fraction? Well, we're kind of just going to do, we're actually going to do the same thing here with only one slight difference to it. Okay, so when we're changing mixed numbers to improper fractions, you always just have to take a look at the mixed number itself without the sign. So what do I mean by that? Okay, basically what we're going to do for this example here is that we're going to leave out the negative and simply just bring it back in as part of the final answer here. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take that 5 3/7 and do the operations from there, like we did with the previous 3 examples. So I've rewritten this just to show you what we need to do first, just like we did in the previous examples. And you notice what I've done here is I've separated the negative sign in front of another set of brackets just to show you that that is completely separate. But notice that the numbers that are inside this bracket here, exact same steps as the previous 3 examples. Okay, so 7 times 5 is 35. 35 plus 3 is 38. So what we have there's 38 over 7, and then bringing back the negative. So that gives us an improper fraction here of negative 38 over 7. All right. All right, so if you turn the page, you can continue on working with the questions here. Okay, and in the next lesson dealing with fractions, we will be dealing with the operations of fractions, okay, specifically the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of fractions, okay? And what we've learned in this lesson will also be incorporated in that lesson as well. All right, see you in the next lesson.